Action. Action.
Well, hey there, everyone listening to the Real Gay Movie Show. We have a very special episode today, but before we get into that, this is your co-host of the Real Gay Movie Show, Ryan Provost, and with me, as always, is the lovely Mike Lovins.
Hey, Ryan. You excited about taking on something new here?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm excited to tell you all what this is. So, Mike and I, when we were talking about this show, of course, we're excited to talk about all the new movies that come out. But you know what? There have been great movies that have come out before. There have been bad movies that have come out before. And we want to talk about some of those too. And specifically, Mike and I are interested in talking about movies that have had a huge impact on the LGBT community over the years. And so every now and then, we're going to record an episode looking back at a movie that has really made an impact. And we'll review it just like we would a new movie, but also maybe talk about the impact it's had, talk about its place in history, talk about how it stood the test of time, and just our general thoughts. What do you think about that, Mike?
I think that's great. And I think I have an idea for a name.
Do you? Oh, I'm so excited.
Are you ready?
Lay it on me, Mike.
The Rainbow Rewind.
You just blew my mind, my friend. I think that's awesome. We are going to call these the Rainbow Rewinds. These will come probably about once a month or so.
Yeah.
So look for these special bonus episodes, just looking back at movies. And tonight we're going to start with one of my favorites, a movie I've seen a million times. To Wong Foo, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar.
Yeah.
A very concise and beautiful title, right?
Right.
And so, for those of you who have not seen this movie, To Wong Foo, what I'm going to call it for short, was released in 1995. So I can't believe it's been 23 years since this movie came out. But it is about three drag queens who are traveling cross country to get to a drag competition and get stuck in a small town and have to get to know the people in this town and introduce them to some new things, introduce themselves to some new things outside their comfort zone, and hilarity ensues from there. And so let's dive right in and talk about maybe the first time we've seen this movie, or if we've seen it multiple times, which I know I have, kind of our relationship with this movie personally and our journey with it. So why don't you start? When was the first time you saw this movie, Mike?
So the first time I saw this movie was probably in the late 90s on like HBO or something like that. I'll be honest, the first time I saw it, it didn't quite resonate with me as much. But over the years, I've grown to appreciate the movie a lot more. So I've seen it, I've probably seen it 3 or 4 times since then.
Okay. So definitely one you've rewatched, but not as much as me, probably.
Not as much as you, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so I remember distinctly seeing this movie in theaters. Like,
wow.
I think I saw this movie in theaters.
How old were you in 95?
I was 8 when this movie came out.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I was a year out of high school.
Right, but I remember seeing this movie. I don't remember if it was my parents or who took me to see it, and I don't really remember having many thoughts about it at the time. But when this movie really had an impact on me was in college. Me and some friends, two of my best friends, we would hang out and just, watch movies. And this was one we went to, and I don't think any of us had seen it in a while. Mm-hmm. And we watched it and just felt this connection, I guess, because there's 3 main characters in it. It was 3 of us, and we just really connected to the movie, really loved it. And so it became something where anytime we would hang out, as we moved away from each other, so as we all left college and moved our separate ways, anytime we would come back together, we would watch it again. Not every single time, but every now and then we would make sure to watch it again. If there's a someone who says they haven't seen it, this is definitely one of those movies, especially if they're like, oh, I haven't seen many gay movies. I'll say, have you seen To Wong Foo? And
Yeah.
if they haven't, this is one I sit them down and make them watch. And so it's just one that I've revisited a million times, to the point to where when I was rewatching it last night to get ready for this episode, I really kind of just had it on the background because I know it well enough.
Yeah.
I didn't need to like pay super close attention. Had it on the background to see if there's anything new I saw, but I was taking notes. I was kind of reading up on some other stuff. I was making dinner and doing all these other things while it was playing. That's just how familiar I am with this one.
You know what's funny is I had totally forgot that Robin Williams was in this movie.
Yeah, he has a cameo in it.
And I love that scene that he was in.
Yeah.
He was awesome in that. Hilarious.
Yeah, as John Jacob Jingleheimer Smith.
John, yeah, his name is my name.
Yeah, and you want to know something funny? So I was doing some research on the movie as I was rewatching it last night. So apparently, this script got to Steven Spielberg, and Steven Spielberg read it and really liked it and thought it was funny, but he wasn't sure if it would translate to audiences, if they would find it funny too. So he gave it to Robin Williams and said, hey, would you read this script and tell me if you think it's funny? Because Robin was apparently his like go-to person for, is this funny?
Wow, that's awesome.
And Robin Williams said, yes, it's really funny. You got to make it. But Robin Williams didn't want to play Vita because he thought he was too hairy to be Vita.
Gotcha.
Which is
That
kind of funny to
would have
me.
been funny.
Yeah, I was thinking about what would this movie have been had Robin Williams been Vita. It would have been very different,
Very different.
a little more slapstick probably. But he said, I do want a cameo in it, and he has that small but really fun role.
And I remember as the opening credits were going, seeing that it was an Amblin Entertainment movie, and I was like, oh wow, so Steven Spielberg was behind this. So
Yeah, and I think the timing of this movie coming out was incredible. I mean, this movie came out in 1995. So let's give some context for what was going on at this time. So this was 2 years before Ellen came out,
okay,
1995. This was 3 years before the whole Matthew Shepard
oh wow, yeah,
tragedy that happened. This was 14 years before the first episode of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Jeez.
Right? Like
Yeah.
this. And it was 20 years before marriage equality was passed by the Supreme Court. So this was a movie way ahead of its time
Yeah,
to be a major studio release. And what I didn't realize until I dug in a little bit more was this movie was, when it was released in September of 95, it was #1 at the box office for 2 weeks in a row. It was the top
that's pretty incredible
movie
for that
1995.
time. Yeah.
That's crazy. That's really interesting to me.
I mean,
So the movies, by the way, the movie that was #1 before To Wong Foo was Mortal Kombat. And the movie that took over the #1 spot in To Wong Foo's third week was Seven.
wow,
Yeah.
very different movies than To Wong Foo.
Very different. Right? So some other context for To Wong Foo. So it was actually nominated for 2 Golden Globes the year it came out.
What categories?
That's what I was going to ask you. I was going to quiz
Okay,
you.
all
What
right,
do you
let me
think it
see.
was nominated for? 2 Golden Globe nominations.
I'm gonna say costuming.
No.
No,
I don't even is costuming a Golden Globe one? I don't think that's even a category there.
maybe not. Okay, so I'm gonna say Best Actor with Patrick Swayze.
Correct. That's one of them.
Okay, and was there an original song in there that was just for the movie?
If there was, it was not nominated. So
Okay.
that's not one of them.
All right, I give up.
So it was Best Supporting Actor. Who do you think? Wesley or John?
I'm gonna say John.
Yep, John Leguizamo.
All right.
Best Supporting Actor. Yeah, so got 2 Golden Globe nominations. Lost both of them, but was
Still,
nominated.
that's a
Right.
pretty big milestone right there.
Yeah, for sure. And then one other thing. So Do you know the Rotten Tomato score for this one?
Oh,
Do you want to guess? Do you want to play that game?
Yeah, let me guess. I'm gonna say it's up there. Let me say 82%.
No, Mike. It's significantly lower than that.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
was shocked at how low it is.
64%.
Lower.
Shit. 50.
Lower.
22%.
Okay, higher than that.
Okay. Go ahead and tell me.
39. It's
Wow.
39. That blows my mind. I wonder how many of those were like at the time, and because I feel like with older movies that existed before Rotten Tomatoes, like there may be some newer reviews, but yeah, 39% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's like there's some really bad movies I've seen lately that have higher than a 39%.
Yeah.
And I really
We've
enjoy this
reviewed
one.
a couple of them.
Yeah, we have. Boggles my mind. And so it's kind of, crazy to me that it was only a 39%. But
It'd be interesting if Rotten Tomatoes did something with older movies where maybe they asked for new reviews or something like that, just to see if that changes at all, or what a new group of people would rate it.
I know that would be interesting for sure.
Yeah.
So more about this movie. So another interesting behind the scenes fact with this movie. So it was directed by Beeban Kidron.
Don't know that name.
The only other thing she has directed that I think people would be familiar with was the Bridget Jones' Diary sequel.
Okay.
She directed that, but nothing much else on her filmography. But they had to find her because there weren't any men who wanted to direct this movie. And so they went with a female director because no male directors would touch it.
Man, times have really changed,
I know.
haven't they?
But on the performer side, John Leguizamo, the part of Chi-Chi was written for him. And so it was specifically for him. So they had him in mind, got him. And then Wesley Snipes really wanted that role of Noxima,
yeah.
And then Patrick Swayze wanted the role of Vita really badly, but people were afraid, the casting folks were afraid that he was too masculine for the role.
Okay.
So to convince them, he took the director and had his own people put him in makeup and put him in full drag, and they walked around New York just to show that he could walk around and
Wow.
be a convincing woman. And that's how he got the part.
I tell you, between Patrick Swayze and Wesley Snipes, two people that back then, if you had asked me, never in a million years would I have guessed that they would do roles like these, but they killed it.
Right. I mean, and they were such big stars for really masculine roles.
And I think that's actually what makes it work.
Yeah.
Because it's just, it was so against type for them.
Right.
That you almost wanted to see the movie just to see how they did in those roles.
I almost think, so in the opening scene, the opening credits, it's those two, they
getting dressed
in drag. So it's the only part of the movie where you ever see them just as men. And they're getting dragged up.
I specifically remember Patrick Swayze walking out
of the shower,
from the shower with that loose towel. Yeah, that scene.
Every time I watch that movie, even though I know it doesn't happen, I kind of hope the towel falls out of his hand for a second, because he was a good looking dude.
Yeah,
he was a good looking guy. But yeah, that's the only time you see him. And I think that was part of it. It's just the shock of taking these movie stars. They weren't. Patrick Swayze and Wesley Snipes were well known, maybe not like top level movie stars. Maybe Patrick Swayze
at that time. Yeah. And this was post Dirty Dancing.
Yeah. So very well known, movie stars, and just taking them and putting them in drag in front of your eyes as soon as it starts the movie. I thought that was a really good touch. I really liked how they did that.
Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah. You already mentioned Robin Williams. Looking back at this movie and seeing that cameo role and thinking about Robin Williams, he really did a lot for gays in the 90s. Because think about it, he was in this, had the cameo role in this. He was obviously a star in The Birdcage,
Right.
another gay movie that I'm sure we'll talk about
I'm sure we'll
in the
get to that
future.
one, yeah.
And then I don't know if you remember in Mrs. Doubtfire,
Yeah.
the character who helps him get dragged up was played by Harvey Firestein and was his like gay brother.
my mother.
Right, who helps him get, into the Mrs. Doubtfire get up.
Right.
Right. And so he did a lot of very positive portrayals of gay characters in a time where that just, you didn't necessarily see that.
Right. And he found the funny in it without making it seem like shtick.
Exactly. Like they weren't funny because they were gay. They were funny characters who were gay.
Right.
And they, weren't necessarily dealing with coming out or with, AIDS or anything
Right.
like that. That was really dominating the conversation around being gay back in the 90s. And so I think when you look back on Robin Williams as a really big
Positive gay icon.
right. In a way, I mean, in the 90s, for someone of his level of stardom to do these kinds of things for the gay community, I thought was really good.
And he played a genie. I mean, come on.
And he played a genie in a bottle before Christina Aguilera ever did. And then, Wesley Snipes was also ahead of his time because think about it. He dressed up as a woman, and then what happens? Eddie Murphy dresses up as a woman in Nutty Professor, and then Martin Lawrence does it for Big Mama's House, and then Tyler Perry builds an entire career doing it.
And Chiwetel Ejiofor in Kinky Boots.
Yeah, so Wesley Snipes even said,
Yeah.
the whole black man dressing up as a woman trend in motion. Although I think he did it better.
He did it pretty damn well.
I think he's the best. Medea can,
Yeah, well,
take a walk.
Medea is shtick.
Exactly. But
she can shtick it.
she can stick it. Another fun fact about this movie is it was originally written as a play. It was going to be a play.
Okay.
It was going to be written for Broadway. But the reason they didn't do that is because the playwright had a hard time figuring out how they were going to do the traveling cross country in a car thing on a stage, how to translate that on a stage. So as he was writing it, he decided, I can't figure this out, so I'm just going to change it and turn it into a screenplay to make it into a movie. And as you think about it, I mean, it does kind of play as like there's a first act where they're building up these drag characters, and then they decide to go cross country. So they get the car and they have some of those adventures and are getting to know each other and establishing, kind of the drag world.
Right.
And then there's the second act, which is all in the small town and them dealing with, getting to know these characters in the small town, kind of introducing them to sophisticated career woman world, right?
Career women.
Right. So I thought that was really interesting because every time I've seen this movie, I've thought this would translate really well into a play. I don't know why they haven't done it.
So I was just going to ask if they'd ever done it then.
So they haven't, but they're actually working on it. So
Okay.
they're developing it into a play. And if it comes to Broadway, I'm there. I would love to see that. I think it's just such a great plot. I think they can figure out getting a car on the stage. I think they'll figure it out.
I think they can too. And with modern projectors and stuff like that, they can do something that makes it look like they're driving. But we've seen a lot of movies like Dirty Dancing and stuff like that that have kind of had their resurgence then by becoming Broadway plays. So I think the time is right for it.
Yeah. And one thing I really love about this movie is it seems very timeless in some ways. Like this movie seems still very relevant today. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel as aged as maybe some other movies.
Well, I think like if you take like that small town aspect of it and go to some small towns now, I think you're still going to have you would still have that kind of trepidation from the people that are in the town of these women and
But I think I think less about that. I think more just the fact that they had a movie featuring gay characters as the three leads, and not once did they talk about coming out.
Right.
Not once did they talk about AIDS. And this was set in the 90s. I mean, how many movies or anything came out about being gay at that time where one of those things, if not both of them, weren't the focal point of the plot? Right?
Yeah.
I think that's a really bold thing that they did that has since paid off over time, because now the movie is still relevant because, coming out is a very different experience now than it was back then.
Right.
The whole AIDS epidemic is very different now than it was back then. And so that movie still holds up because they did kind of ignore some of the pressing social injustices and issues that were going on at the time.
It was just these three people living their lives the way that they do.
Right. It was a great kind of escape movie that, can speak to many generations, and feels a little relevant. Whereas I feel like a movie from the mid 90s featuring gay characters can feel very outdated. Now, heck, a movie featuring gay characters from 5 years ago could feel really outdated because, for instance, I watched, Queer as Folk, and they keep talking about how they don't have the right to get married and all this kind of stuff. And that kind of stuff feels dated because we do have those rights now, right? And they talk so much about some of those social issues that were really important back in the early 2000s, which is great to look back and be like, wow, that's what life was like then, but it doesn't feel as relevant now.
It's funny how when you think about the early 2000s, it almost feels like it's not that long ago, but it was almost 20 years ago.
When you watch things where they're talking about social issues, it does feel very different because the things we were talking about then are very different than what we're talking about now. And I think this movie was really smart not to necessarily tackle those things, but to just focus on the fabulousness of these three characters.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
So there was a scene in the movie that I really loved. It when they are already when they first get to the town, and they get set up in their room, and they're like, oh, what is this? It's all dingy and ugly and stuff like that. And so then the next day they're like, they want to decorate and give it some life. I loved how they used the 70s Wonder Woman theme song as they were decorating the room and stuff like that, and throwing stuff up on the wall and it just sticks, and Wonder Woman.
I love how they just embrace the campiness of that. Yeah. It's a moment where, it almost felt like in Mary Poppins, where they're cleaning the room just by like snapping their fingers.
Right.
Yeah, they're just throwing shit on the walls and it just sticks perfectly.
It sticks, and everything's... Yeah, so I really loved that scene. So at the beginning of the movie, they're doing their drag competition.
Yeah.
And RuPaul was the winner from the previous year.
Yeah. She won the original RuPaul's Drag Race.
Yeah. So
with a great drag name, by the way, Miss Rachel Tension.
I didn't catch that.
That's her drag name, and then she has that Confederate flag dress.
Yeah.
down.
Okay. So it makes so much more sense now when you say it, because I was gonna ask, her Confederate flag dress. Was it just an ironic kind of thing? But I didn't know that's what her name was.
Her drag name was
Tension.
Miss Rachel Tension.
I love it. Okay. Totally makes sense now.
The only appropriate, fabulous use of a Confederate flag in all of history.
Right. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But that's another thing that just makes this movie kind of timeless, is because a young gay kid watching the movie now would know RuPaul because RuPaul is such a huge, figure now. Probably even bigger than she was when this movie came out. Like, if a gay kid watching this movie right now was going to say, if you ask them who's the biggest star that was in this movie, they would probably say RuPaul. They
probably would.
A young gay kid, right?
Yeah. I mean, RuPaul, from everybody that was in that movie, is the only one that is still culturally relevant.
Like, right, as far as like cultural,
well, or
current
just
cultural
socially
relevance.
relevant.
Right, yeah.
Unfortunately, Patrick Swayze has passed away, and
Robin Williams.
Robin Williams has passed away, and Wesley Snipes' career,
not much
going on there.
But yeah, so yeah, RuPaul is probably the most current relevant person in this, especially for young gay people. Yeah.
So there was a scene where they go and they find all these like 60s clothes and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, in the little antique shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The shop boy that's working the store there.
Yeah.
Was he gay?
I thought he was when I first, every time I first see this movie, I think about that. First see him in the movie, I think about it because I'm like, I think he's at least bi.
I think so, because like later on, then he's wearing like the feather boa, and it seemed like I was trying to, because when Vita gives him that book, and says that this book really helped me out and stuff like that,
because he has the stutter. So she's trying to help him with it.
So it was for the stutter.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's why she was.
I thought it was, this helped me come out.
No. It was to help him with his stutter, Mike.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. Although if it helps him come out too, I mean, he was rocking that boa by the end of it. Yeah, he liked his feather boa a little too much at the end to be 100% straight, I think.
Yeah.
But that was okay. So there were some things about this movie that do feel a little out of place, like that make this movie feel not current. And ironically, it's not really a lot of the stuff about, reaction to gays. So for instance, I don't know if you noticed this, but when they first get to that little town, there's the scene where Chi-Chi almost gets gang raped by like a bunch of the young hoodlums in this town.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're all like cornering her in a field, and I feel like that would not play really well, especially because those characters then like in one scene get completely turned around, and they're like, they go from like willing to sexually assault this new female who just got to their town, to defending drag queens over the course of a couple days. Right, that doesn't seem like that's exactly how that would have gone down.
It also took, Noxima's claws to the balls.
Yeah. Yeah. But even that, like, I was like, I don't know if that, like, watching that, I was like, that doesn't seem like they would get redeemed that easily nowadays. I feel like that was something that people kind of looked past a little more easily back then. And nowadays, like, those characters would not be redeemable. Rightly so. I was going to say something else about... So another thing that doesn't translate well today, I don't even know if it translated then, but the notion of 3 drag queens who it seemed like never get out of drag.
Yeah.
Right. They consider themselves drag queens, but they never dress as boys. They go cross country in drag.
Well, and I thought about that too, like specifically when I saw when I saw Noxima going to bed in a little nightie. There was just something about that when they all get into their nightgowns and stuff like that too. Like when does it go from being drag to
being who you are?
Yeah.
and that's something where, like, I mean, every drag queen I know in real life, when they're not in drag, they're dressed as boys for the most part.
Right.
Or they're kind of ambiguous about their gender. Then there's some fluidity there. Whereas in this movie, they are very much, in drag, in that, character, day, night, regardless of situation, regardless of anything. Whereas, like, it would be really easy when they realize, oh, we're getting into a really rough area. We need to find a motel to stay at. Well, let's go to a rest stop. We'll change into boy clothes and then we'll just be fine.
Right.
It didn't even seem like they had
like
had
that thought never even crossed
right.
their mind.
Like
Yeah.
they are just like, well, we're stuck as women. Like there's nothing we can do, and that doesn't seem relevant, especially because like I've seen an interview with RuPaul where actually Oprah was interviewing RuPaul and asked him about like when he does drag, and he was very clear. He said, I do drag when I get paid. When I'm not paid, I'm in boy clothes.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I know of a lot of drag queens that I know personally.
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting to me, that concept of they're going completely cross country, knowing they're probably going through some not as friendly environments, and did not think to, hey, let's pack a few boy outfits just to get through here safely.
I wonder if, just for the sake of story, if the movie makers were like, people might not understand why they would go back and forth and stuff like that. Like, it's easier to comprehend that these guys love dressing up as women and then just live their life that way.
Or that's just a plot hole that straight people are too naive to really poke a hole in. Like,
Or that.
whereas like us gays would be like, why don't they just put on their boy clothes? Like straight people just, I think, assume that anyone who would dress as a woman just dresses as a woman all the
Right.
time. And the drag queens just live their lives as women, and they can't distinguish, drag queens from trans folks or anything like that. And they just assume it's all the same. And so I think that they probably just took advantage of the fact that straight audiences wouldn't know the difference anyway.
It was 1995.
And gay people were having enough fun watching a movie with gay characters that they weren't going to say anything about it.
Right.
Maybe. I don't know. What was your favorite half of the movie? The first half where they're establishing the characters and they're starting to do that cross-country trip? Or were you more drawn into the small town and the plot that happens there?
Oh, I was definitely more drawn to the small town part.
Really?
Yeah. I thought that's really, yes, the first half established who they are, but I really felt like it's that second half that almost redefines who they are.
Yeah. See, I'm the opposite. I love the first half of the movie. In fact, of all the times I've seen this movie, I think I've seen probably the first half more than the second half, because this is a fun movie to like get ready to go out to. So like you have it on while you're getting ready, you're having your first few cocktails, and then you go out. So I've actually seen the first 2/3 of this movie
Way more than you've seen
a million times, and I've seen the last third of the movie probably 500,000 times. So I really love that whole like them establishing that world and then them going out in a car. And I could have seen a whole movie of them just going cross country. The car never breaks down. They're just going from stop to stop and count. So I love the scene where they stop at the hotel and they're greeted and welcomed, and they don't understand why. And it's because it's filled with a female basketball
team.
convention,
Yeah.
And so they fit right in. I could have seen.
I love that they even threw in a little bit of them playing.
Exactly.
The
Yeah.
next day.
So I don't know. I love the movie the way it is, but I could have seen an entire movie of them just traveling and going around the country and having all kinds of weird adventures in their drag personas.
I think what I really liked about the second half though was them opening the eyes of people who wouldn't normally come across people like them.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's unrealistic for that time.
I mean, that was part of my notes, is that, how open these people were in this super small town. I mean, how many people were even in that town? Like 20?
Right.
If that, like,
Yeah.
how open these people were to drag queens. Like, that does not seem like that would have been the response in 1995 to 3 men in a broke down convertible in a small town like that.
Yeah. Maybe that's what was appealing though. Just
But that's also something that I think makes the movie timeless, is there really isn't much anti-gay violence. I mean, that is in there. The like notion of being afraid of like
Right.
the cop finding out that they were actually men in women's clothes, and that kind of fear that they have of like going to a motel in the middle of nowhere. So that was definitely there. And that's still present, right? There's still tons of hate crimes and violence that happens against the gay community and definitely the trans community. But the fact that it wasn't super prevalent, and the fact that the folks in the small town were able to come around and really embrace these three people because they, really cared about them as people and really appreciated everything that they were able to contribute to their town in the short time that they were there. That made it a little more timeless, because I don't think that anyone in 1995 would have thought that would be the outcome.
Well, and the interesting thing too is that so the sheriff, played by Chris Penn, was probably the most homophobic character in the whole movie.
Yeah.
And then you start to realize that he's probably gay himself.
I know they have that weird scene where he's kind of like
in the bar, and he's like talking about
By the way, okay, so my favorite part of his character is when he's hunting them down and he makes a list of, I have it pulled up, I have a screenshot of it pulled up. He calls it places for homos. And there's 5 places listed. They are flower shops, ballet schools, flight attendants lounges, restaurants for brunch, and antique shops.
Yeah, I laughed at that too, and I thought it was funny. Then when he does go to the ballerina studio or whatever, there is that one boy at the end of the row of,
and he's like looking at him like this little boy may have like shrunken down from being full grown Patrick Swayze in drag. Like, I didn't get that part at all. Another fun fact that I read about this movie, and so the scene where Chris Penn pulls over the 3 of them, and there's a part where he has Patrick Swayze get out of the car, and he's like hitting on Vita, and Vita's trying to like, get him to stop, and he puts his hand up Vita's skirt to cop a feel, and Patrick Swayze goes, "Get your hand off my dick, buddy." So Patrick Swayze put a corn cob down his pants and didn't tell Chris Penn, so that his surprise reaction would be authentic. So the reaction you see is of Chris Penn grabbing
a corn
cob in Patrick Swayze's underwear. So it's real authentic.
That's hilarious.
Authentic surprise that there's so many kernels on Patrick Swayze's dick. So one conversation that me and some of my friends have had around this movie that I think is really fun is, I think this is a movie that should definitely get a remake. They're remaking everything.
Okay.
I think we should remake To Wong Foo. And the conversation we always have is who should play the 3 leads? Who should play Vita? Who should play Noxzema? Who should play Chi-Chi?
Okay.
So do you have any thoughts? Who would play these characters?
Yeah, so my first thought on who would play Vita is Chris Hemsworth.
Okay. I could see it.
I could totally see it. And I think he's got the sense of humor for it. With or without his Australian accent, I think he could really make that role work. He's got that same kind of, much more muscular body than Patrick Swayze, but he still has that kind of like hyper masculine body that it would be kind of interesting to see what he looks like in a dress.
I agree. As I was thinking about people, I was like eliminating people who were too buff, and that's why no Hemsworth made my list.
Okay.
Who else did you have? Tell me all of yours, and then I'll do some of mine.
Okay. For for Noxzema, the Wesley Snipes role, I was thinking Michael B. Jordan.
Mm-hmm. He was on my list too.
Okay. He's got beautiful lips, and I could just picture those with lipstick on.
I mean, he's got beautiful everything.
Yeah,
I'm a big Michael B. Jordan fan.
Yeah, he's pretty.
Yes, he is.
He'd have to shave, but his mustache. He's typically got facial hair these days, but
yeah.
But let me see what you think about this.
Okay. Lay it on me.
So instead of a Hispanic American, John Cho, and having an Asian American in that role, and
Of Chi-Chi?
yeah,
Okay.
but a different name, obviously, but doing more instead of doing like, the cha 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 kind of stuff. Maybe he could be, just add a new bit of culture to the story. In like the competition scene or something, he could do like a Mulan-esque
Or Kim
geisha
Chi.
kind of makeup. Or
You don't watch Drag Race, but Kim Chi was one of the big Drag Race finalists
Okay.
a few seasons ago. So kind of doing that kind of
Yeah.
vibe. Yeah. No, I can see that. I think that's John Cho. Which one's John Cho?
he played Sulu in the more recent Star Trek movies.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. No. Yeah, that's a good choice.
Thanks.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Did you have others or did you just stick with your three?
So when you mentioned this, I had asked Pete what he thought, and he mentioned Channing Tatum in the Patrick Swayze role.
I thought about that too, but he's too buff. He's too mannish. I think mannish could maybe pass in 95 because people were too naive back then.
Yeah.
But I don't think it would pass in 2018. Do you? Like, because I thought about that. I was wondering about Channing Tatum because he does have a great comedic timing.
He did kind of a drag thing in that Pink video.
I didn't see that.
Okay, there's a video, one of Pink's more recent videos. Channing Tatum is in it, and
Is he convincing?
with a little more makeup, maybe it would have worked
And
better.
the other thing is like vocally, like the three of them in the original Tu Wong Fu, Swayze, Snipes, and Leguizamo did a pretty good job of like
Yeah,
having feminine everything, like the way they carried themselves, the way they. I would say the one who probably struggled the most was probably Wesley Snipes
yeah.
of the three of them, but they were able to carry themselves in very feminine ways too. I can't see Channing Tatum. I could see Channing Tatum do a lot of things.
Yeah.
I can't see him serving me real fishy queen though.
So I did have a couple other alternates.
Okay.
I thought Kevin Hart,
Yeah.
but I didn't know if he was too short.
Oh, stop it. Stop it.
I guess they make big enough heels.
Yeah.
And then
Kevin Hart would be good.
if you stuck with a Hispanic role, I actually thought Michael Pena.
Is he too old? Because Chi-Chi, it's less about race, I think. I think it's more about being young
Yeah,
and
I mean-
naive with Chi-Chi. Or were you thinking for Vita?
No, I was thinking for Chi-Chi. I was thinking, if you shave off his facial hair and stuff like that, he might.
He's older. How old
appear
is
younger. Oh, I don't know.
he? I don't know either.
Okay, but he was just an.
But he's really good. He was another name I thought of, but I tried to limit my list to people who were 40 or younger,
Okay.
kind of skewed on the younger side, especially with Chi-Chi.
Yeah.
So I have a longer list because I've thought about this a lot.
I can tell.
So I'm going to give you a few of my big names for each category, but then I'm going to save my final three, like the three I would cast today, for
Okay.
last.
All right, gotcha.
Okay, but I'm going to tell you just some of the names I went through first. So for Vita, Lin-Manuel Miranda
Okay.
of Hamilton fame,
Mm-hmm.
Gael Garcia Bernal.
Don't know him.
He was he's a famous Mexican actor, really beautiful, like has kind of the frame, like he just has the frame, I think, for a more feminine look.
Okay.
Like I think he could pass if he needed to, and has done some kind of comedic stuff before. He's not known for comedy, but he could be funny. And I didn't think about race too much at all.
Gotcha.
Except for Noxzema, because there's something about her character that just
Right.
like I don't know. I think having a really talented
That
African American
sassy black
actor, yeah, kind of that role. I think really added to the movie.
Right.
Another for Vita, Kit Harington of Game of Thrones.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah, I thought he could be good. Again, a little more feminine. I could see feminine
Right.
there. And then Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah.
Kind of that, because Vita has to be a little bit older, a little bit wiser, has
Wiser, yeah.
been around for a while, could be a drag mother, right? And so Benedict Cumberbatch has that kind of like a little bit, seasoned
Yeah.
queen look to him.
I like it. Okay.
So those are my Vitas. My Noximas, I had Michael B. Jordan as well. I also had Donald Glover.
Okay. I could see that.
Yep. And then this last one, he was on Saturday Night Live. He always played Barack Obama during Obama's presidency, but Jay Farrow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I can see that.
I could see him because he kind of can transform into anyone. Like he does really good impressions. I think he could just, again, transform. So Chi-Chi, I had the longest list. And again, with Chi-Chi, I was thinking more of very young, because that's one thing in Tu Wong Fu, I feel like they almost look a little too equal age-wise. Like I would like to see a little more discrepancy between Vita and Noxima's age. I want them to be a little older, and then Chi-Chi to be really a young up-and-comer.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So some names I have there: Tom Holland, so Spider-Man, the new Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. Chris Colfer from Glee. He was Kurt.
Okay.
Speaking of Glee, Darren Criss.
Yeah.
Who was Blaine in Glee. Harry Styles.
Okay.
Who just was in Dunkirk, so he actually has some acting experience. Jamie Bell.
Okay.
Could also
He'd
pull
be
it off.
Probably a little older on that list.
A little bit older on the list, but still like has a young look to him.
Yeah.
And then Ezra Miller,
Okay.
who was the Flash.
Yeah.
Last year in Justice League. So those were kind of my thoughts for that. Like someone younger. Again, I didn't think, it necessarily needed to be, a Latino actor. I thought it was more important to have someone who could pass that off as like younger, naive, trying to make it in the drag world. And that's really the characteristic about Chi-Chi that I thought was most interesting. But here's where I want to go with this.
All right.
If I were casting. Okay. Instead of getting an actor to play, because now we have some really famous drag queens out there, you get drag queens to play Vita and Noxima. So for Vita, you get Bianca Del Rio.
Okay.
From RuPaul's Drag
Yeah.
Race.
Actually, I know Bianca.
You know Bianca. Yeah, Bianca's actually gotten very famous, even for non-Drag Race fans.
I saw that movie Hurricane Bianca.
Yes. For Noxima, you get Bob the Drag Queen,
Okay.
who also won her season. Both of them won their seasons of RuPaul's Drag Race, so they have that credibility. And then for Chi-Chi, you get Timothy Chalamet. And so you have two actual seasoned big name drag queens, and then this like Academy Award nominated actor.
Yeah.
And they're trying to turn him into, an amazing drag queen. Like that, what makes more sense than that?
That would probably be a straight to Netflix movie.
Stop it. No, but you get like a really awesome director.
Yeah. No, I could totally see that.
Yeah. And Bianca and Bob have both done a lot. Like they're performers, and I think they could actually, with a really great director, a great script, the kind of effort that was put into the original Tu Wong Fu, could have really great performances brought out of them. I don't think it would have to be a straight to Netflix movie. I think you can put those actors up there, and then you have like that Timothy Chalamet, and you surround them. The supporting cast is all like actual, more seasoned actors, maybe in some of those small town folk roles. I think that would be a really cool movie, and a twist on it, because the twist in 95 was, let's take these really masculine actors that you wouldn't expect to see in drag and put them in drag. The 2018 version is, let's take actual drag queens and put them in a big movie.
See, that's where I can tell that you've really thought about this.
Oh my God, so much.
Because obviously I went with the same formula of the original in my picks, but I like where your head is at with that.
Right, it's just a new take, a new twist on it to make it something different.
Yeah.
Although, yeah, when I was first thinking about it, I was thinking, who are the guys you put up there? But then I was like, we have all these really cool drag queens now. Let's put some of them in.
Give them the spotlight.
Give them the spotlight. Yeah. So those are my folks.
All of a sudden, this movie is so huge, and you have Oscar-nominated Bianca Del Rio.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that would be a lot of fun. They
Yeah.
need to remake this movie. I know they're trying to make it into a Broadway play, and that should happen soon. But I think this is the perfect timing, especially with RuPaul's Drag Race being more popular than ever. What more perfect time to make a movie featuring drag queens?
Well, maybe let's say in about 5 years after the play has.
Why are you making me wait 5 years, Mike? My goodness.
Because things, with great anticipation comes greater reward.
Stop it. Okay, so let's talk quotes. Favorite quotes from this movie. Any that stood out for you, Mike?
Everybody's saying, I declare.
I decline.
I decline.
Yes. Oh, me and my friends still pull that one out for sure. For sure. We love that one. Yeah, that's definitely a favorite.
Some of them are so subtle, though, too. Just like Noxzema Jackson, Jesse's daughter.
Right. My favorite Noxzema quote is when Chi-Chi jumps out of the car and is running away, and Noxzema goes, "Look at her running like she's running across the border." Yeah, you're right.
See,
Noxzema's quotes are
stuff
all
like that.
Yeah,
But it was. She had a lot of one-liner
Yes.
quips that I just remember really laughing out loud with those, or as the kids say now, lol.
well, even like, so I have a few. So like when they're in the car and they've been pulled over by Chris Penn, and he's talking to Vita outside the car, and Chi-Chi and Noxzema are just sitting there, and Chi-Chi says, "I think he's prejudiced." And then Noxzema just looks at her and goes, "I bet you were the brightest in your class, weren't you?"
Yes, yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, well, and that was the other thing too, was that Chi-Chi, with a lot of those eds and stuff, like those little extras that she put
I
on
think
the end
this
of
man may be deceased.
deceased. Yeah, those had me roaring.
Yeah, the chemistry between the three of them was so great too. And those aren't three actors you would necessarily think to put together. In fact, another thing I read about this movie is, so Patrick Swayze is really by the book. Like everything is scripted and he wants everything to go exactly as scripted. Whereas John Leguizamo was very improv, wanted to improvise lines, wanted to throw in some things if he thought of it. And they really butted heads to the point to where they were worried that Patrick Swayze was actually going to like punch John Leguizamo in the face.
No.
Because you picture Vita punching Chi-Chi in the face on the set of the movie. Like it was that bad that they just butted heads. But you wouldn't know it from watching the movie,
Right.
because the chemistry between the three characters is amazing. It's so fantastic. Or even like, little things like Little Latin Boy in Drag. Why are you crying? Like little things like
Right.
that. The one-liners were great. The chemistry between the three of them was so great. I didn't even care about the other character. Like every other character in this could have been terrible, but just the three of them together
Yeah.
were amazing. They just play the characters so well and play off each other so well. So, I don't know, do you have any more thoughts on this one, or are you ready to rate it?
Yeah, I'm ready. I think I'm ready to rate it.
Okay, Mike, how many reels would you give to Wong Foo? Thanks for everything, Julie Newmar.
3.5.
3.5.
3.5.
Okay.
It's a fantastic movie. It's like we've said, it's still relevant now. It's timeless, and obviously, it's a get it girl. People should see this movie. How about you?
I mean, I give it 4 reels. This is
had
4
a
reels.
feeling.
Yeah, I mean, and not just for the content of the movie, right? Like the movie itself is great on its own merits. It might be in the 3.5 reel range, but because of movies are such a personal thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when a movie means so much to you personally, like it just elevates a little bit more. And this movie just means so much to me. It means a lot to my closest friends. And then looking back on the fact that it came out in 1995, and like we've already talked about, it does feel more timeless than other LGBT films or TV shows from that time or even later, the fact that it still feels as relevant or fun without feeling so dated,
Right.
makes it even better, right? That this movie was able to just exist, be a really fun time, have so many laughs, and still, 23 years later, be funny, be a concept that you could still remake into a really fun Broadway play or movie or anything like that. So, for all those reasons, and specifically for the three lead performances, which are just iconic for LGBT film performances, I think that this movie gets a four reels for me. It's just, is the movie itself flawless? No, but is it flawless as something that I love and will revisit many, many, many times over the coming years? Absolutely. So four reels.
All right. Well, I can't argue with you on that. I mean, obviously, this movie strikes you in such
Yeah.
a personal way that.
Well, and that's the great thing about movies.
Yeah.
And so we are going to do this probably about once a month, one of our Rainbow Rewinds. So I'm sure there will be movies that speak to many of those who listen to us. And so hopefully To Wong Foo is one. If you haven't seen this one in a while, or if you haven't seen it at all and you're looking to check it out, it's currently on Netflix. So check it out there while you still can, because we all know Netflix just takes things away right when we're getting ready to watch it.
Watching that.
Exactly. So make sure you check that out. And until next time, thanks for listening and have a gay day.
All right.